Honey, where are you anyway? Her voice crackled through my phone, sharp and breathless. I just picked up my brother and his family from the train station. And there's some guy in your apartment. He says my things are in black bags by the garbage chute. How could you rent it out? Hello? I stood in the parking lot outside the grocery store, one hand gripping the cart handle, the other frozen around my phone. Milk was sweating through the plastic bag. The sun was too bright for a moment like this. My name is Ethan Caldwell. I'm not dramatic by nature. I avoid confrontation. I let things slide longer than I should. That's my flaw. And standing there, listening to my wife unravel, I realized that flaw had finally grown teeth. Ethan, she pressed again. Say something. I closed my eyes. The image came uninvited. That one-room apartment her mother owned. The place we were never supposed to touch. The place that somehow became a revolving door for relatives, cousins, brothers-in-law, everyone except us. Every visit came with instructions. Every stay came with entitlement. I'm not near the phone charger, I said quietly. I'll call you back. That was a lie. I was fully charged. What I didn't tell her was that I'd been back in that apartment 3 nights ago. That I'd stood in the narrow kitchen, listening to the radiator knock like a warning. That I'd finally done something small, legal, and irreversible. Something that felt like breathing after being underwater too long. Behind me, a shopping cart rolled into my bumper with a dull thud. I didn't flinch. Because somewhere between those black bags and that garbage chute, a line had been crossed, and this time I wasn't stepping back. I didn't call her back right away. I put the groceries in the trunk, returned the cart, and sat behind the wheel longer than necessary. The car smelled like oranges and cheap disinfectant. My hands were steady, which surprised me. When I finally dialed, she answered on the first ring. You hung up on me, she said. Not angry. That was worse. I didn't, I replied. I needed a minute. Well, I need an explanation. My brother's standing here with his kids, Ethan. There are trash bags by the chute. My clothes. My mom's cookware. And some stranger changed the lock. I started the engine. Is your mom there? Pause. Muffled voices. A child whining. She's on her way, my wife said. Ethan, please tell me you didn't do something without talking to me. I pulled out of the parking lot, signal blinking. Do you remember last winter? I asked. When your cousin stayed just for 2 weeks? That's not the point. He left grease stains on the mattress, I said. And your mom said we should be grateful he didn't charge us rent. Silence again. Thicker this time. I didn't throw anything away, I continued. Everything's packed, labeled, stored exactly how your mother taught me to store things. You rented it, she whispered. It wasn't a question. Yes. You had no right. I merged onto the highway, traffic tightening around me. I had every right, I said, and felt my chest tighten, not with fear but with something like grief finally being acknowledged. Her brother's voice cut in, loud and mocking in the background. Who does this guy think he is? I smiled just once, because for the first time I knew exactly who I was, and who I was done being. By the time I reached the apartment building, the street was already crowded. A double-parked sedan. A stroller blocking the ramp. My mother-in-law's voice carried through the open lobby doors before I even stepped inside. I raised her better than this, she was saying. You don't touch family property without asking. Family property. She'd said those words for years, usually while handing me a mop or a bill. My wife stood near the elevator, arms folded tight against her chest. Her brother paced like a trapped animal, phone pressed to his ear, whispering threats to someone who wasn't listening. 2 kids sat on the floor, swinging their legs against the wall, bored and unaware. The tenant I'd rented the apartment to, a soft-spoken grad student named Marcus, stood by the mailboxes, clutching his lease like a shield. He looked exactly how I felt 3 nights ago, unsure whether doing the right thing would cost him everything. There he is, my mother-in-law snapped when she saw me. The man who thinks contracts matter more than blood. I set my keys on the lobby table. The clink echoed louder than expected. I didn't touch your things, I said evenly. I packed them. I documented everything. And I paid for storage. You humiliated us, my wife said quietly. Her eyes searched my face, looking for the man who used to apologize first. I protected us, I replied. There's a difference. Her brother laughed. Protected what? You don't even own the place. I turned to him. No, I said. But I own the debt. That got their attention. I paid off your mother's arrears 6 years ago. Every late fee. Every notice. That apartment wasn't being shared. It was being quietly rescued. The lobby went still. Marcus shifted behind me. And in that silence, something old and heavy finally began to crack. My mother-in-law's mouth opened, then closed. She adjusted her coat like it might shield her from facts. "That was a loan," she said. "You offered." "I did," I agreed. "And you said you'd handle the paperwork." My wife looked between us, confusion flickering across her face. "What paperwork?" I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folded envelope. Not dramatic. Just thick. The kind that carries weight without trying. 6 years ago, I said, the bank gave your mom 2 choices. Pay the arrears in full, or sign a repayment agreement that transferred management rights until the balance was cleared. Her brother scoffed. "Management rights? What is this, a business?" "It became one," I said. "The moment the notices started showing up." I handed the envelope to my wife. She didn't take it at first. Her fingers hovered, then closed around the paper like it might burn. "She signed," I continued. "Not because I forced her. Because she was out of options." My mother-in-law shook her head. "You were supposed to give that back." "I did," I said. "In the only way that made sense." My wife opened the envelope. Her breathing changed as she read. Slower. Deeper. "So, you've been managing it?" she asked. "Yes. And all the times my family stayed there." "They were guests," I said. "Unregistered ones." Her brother's laugh came out sharp. "This is insane. You can't just lock people out." "I didn't," I replied. "I followed the agreement." The elevator dinged behind us, doors opening to an empty car. My wife folded the papers carefully. "Mom," she said, her voice quieter now, "why didn't you tell me any of this?" Her mother looked away. And in that small human movement, the truth landed harder than any accusation ever could. No one spoke as the elevator doors slid shut again. The silence felt deliberate, like the building itself was waiting to hear what would be said next. My mother-in-law finally broke it. "Because it wasn't your business," she said to my wife. Not cruel. Just practiced. My wife flinched. "It was always my business." Her brother stepped forward, lowering his voice like that made him reasonable. "Okay, fine. Papers, agreements, whatever. We just need the apartment tonight. The kids are exhausted." I looked at the kids again. One of them was rubbing sleep out of his eyes with the back of his hand. That tugged at me more than I expected. I've never been good at holding a line when there are witnesses to my guilt. "There's a hotel across the street," I said. "I already booked 2 rooms." My wife turned to me startled. "You did?" "Yes," I said. "This morning. When I finalized the lease." Her brother scoffed. "So you planned this?" I nodded. "I prepared for it." That distinction mattered to me. My mother-in-law's voice softened, which scared me more than shouting. "Ethan, you've embarrassed us. In front of strangers." I glanced at Marcus, who was pretending to read a fire safety notice. "He's not a stranger," I said. "He's a tenant. And he did nothing wrong." My wife exhaled slowly. "Mom," she said, "did you ever plan to give us that apartment?" Her mother hesitated. "Just long enough." "No," she said. The word echoed in the lobby. And in that moment, my wife didn't look at her mother. She looked at me. That look stayed with me as we stepped outside. Not gratitude. Not anger. Something more fragile, recognition. The air had cooled. Evening pressed in, carrying the smell of wet concrete and street food from the corner cart. Her brother was still muttering into his phone, already rewriting the story for someone else. My wife walked a few steps ahead of me, then stopped. "You should have told me," she said without turning around. "I know," I replied. "I was afraid if I did, I'd lose my nerve." She nodded once. "You don't usually do things like this." "I usually clean up after them," I said. Quietly. She finally turned. Her eyes were red but steady. I thought keeping the peace meant being patient. So did I. Across the street, the hotel lights flickered on, one by one. Her mother stood rigid on the sidewalk, purse clutched tight, looking smaller than she had in years. "I don't know how to stand between you and my family," my wife said. "I never learned." I took a breath. "I'm not asking you to choose. I'm asking you to see what choosing nothing has been costing us." Her brother shouted something crude from behind us. She didn't respond. Instead, she reached for my hand. Hesitant. "Real. Go home," she told them. Not loud. Not cruel. "We'll talk later." Her mother's face hardened, then cracked. And as they walked toward the hotel, something unspoken shifted, like a door finally closing, not to keep people out, but to let something inside survive. The apartment felt unfamiliar when we got back. Not because anything had changed, but because the noise was gone. No voices bleeding through thin walls. No extra shoes by the door. Just the hum of the fridge and the soft tick of the clock above the sink. My wife set her purse down carefully, like she was afraid of breaking something invisible. I keep replaying it, she said. Every time I told myself it wasn't a big deal. I leaned against the counter. So do I. Every time I told myself I was being reasonable. She let out a short, humorless laugh. You were the reasonable one. I was the one asking you to shrink. That landed harder than anything her family had said. She sat at the small table, palms flat against the wood. My mom always taught me that love meant access. If you loved someone, they could take what they needed. And if you said no? I asked. She swallowed. Then you were selfish. I pulled out the spare key to the apartment, the one I'd carried for years out of habit, and set it on the table between us. I don't want to live like that, I said. Not with you. She stared at the key for a long moment, then pushed it back toward me. Neither do I. Outside, a car door slammed. Laughter echoed briefly, then faded. Life moving on, indifferent. I'm scared, she admitted, of what happens next. So am I said. But for the first time it feels like we're scared in the same direction. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. And in that quiet kitchen, I realized this wasn't about an apartment anymore. It was about who we let in, and who we stopped handing the keys to. The next morning, light crept through the blinds in thin, careful lines. My wife was already awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, phone in her hands. She texted, she said. A long one. I didn't ask to read it. That was another habit we were breaking. She says she feels betrayed, my wife continued. That she never thought I'd let a stranger take priority over family. I waited. She didn't ask how I felt, my wife added. Or if we were okay. That silence told me everything. We had coffee without rushing. Real coffee, not the instant kind we used when the apartment was full. The kitchen felt bigger than it ever had. Around noon, my wife stood up, took the spare key from the table drawer and walked to the window. She held it for a moment, then set it inside a small box where we keep passports and important papers. Not for emergencies, she said quietly. For boundaries. I smiled, tired but honest. Later that day, Marcus stopped by to thank us again. He brought a small plant for the windowsill. For the radiator, he joked. When the door closed behind him, my wife leaned against me. I thought standing up would feel loud, she said. But it feels calm. I nodded. That's how you know it's real. Outside, the city moved on. Trains arrived. Families argued. Keys changed hands. But inside our apartment, our home, nothing else needed to be said. Because sometimes poetic justice isn't someone losing. It's finally choosing not to give yourself away.